Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in this world, and welcome to today's Security Boulevard webinar. I am your moderator, Charlene O'Hanlon, and I welcome you to today's event. We have a really interesting webinar on tap, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First off, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, please know you'll be able to access it on demand. We'll be sending out a link via email when the webinar ends that will enable you to get to the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if you have a question at any time during the event, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many audience questions as we can. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is shifting left and right to ensure full application security coverage. Our speakers today are both are with CA Veracode. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Charlene. My name is Bipin Mistry. I'm Director of Product Management for the CA Veracode Dynamic Analysis product line. What we're going to do today, and with me I have Bhavna Sarathi, who was also part of the team that handles the product management side for dynamic analysis. Bhavna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. This is Bhavna Sarathi. I'm the Principal Product Manager for Dynamic Analysis.
So what we're going to do today is walk you through our perspective on the dynamic analysis or the DAST then once I've gone through that, we'll take questions as they come on, or we can always take questions at the end as well. So we would like to make this as interactive as possible. And then once I've gone through my section, Bhavna will walk through where Veracode or CA Veracode sits with respect to our specific product line and why it makes sense from an application security perspective to both shift left as part of the CI/CD or DevOps environment, as well as to shift right to provide complete coverage for all your application security requirements and needs. Okay, so before I go through the broader detail of the presentation, let me quickly just align on where CA Veracode is from a application security perspective as a whole. So the first slide looks at it's your typical Gartner quadrant in terms of the broader AppSec market. And the broader AppSec market, and I'll go into this in a bit more detail, covers a number of different areas as it relates to application security, and not just DAST in general. And as you can see from the slide itself, CA Veracode is in the top right-hand segment or the quadrant where, from an AppSec perspective, where you'd expect sort of the key vendors to be and where CA Veracode. And we've been positioned in this segment of the market, or this quadrant of the market in particular, for a number of years. And again, as we move forward, the broader portfolio, as I said from the previous slide, it references not just dynamic analysis or DAST in general, but also a number of different technologies that make up AppSec. And what this next slide shows is, if you look at a standard CI/CD development cycle or a DevOps environment, where you're looking at commit phases, build phases, test, release, deploy, etc., CA Veracode has a number of different products that actually will allow you to test your applications, both as you're developing them right at the beginning of the CI/CD environment, all the way through to sort of test, release, deploy, and operate, i.e., as the application goes into production. And what I want to home in on is where the CA Veracode Dynamic Analysis product fits, which is typically in the pre-production and the post-production phases of the CI/CD development cycle. or the DevOps environment. And what I mean by that is as the application is fully built, you're running your regression testing, etc. So that's part of the pre-release phase of the cycle. And then when your applications go live and are in production, you run dynamic analysis or DAST in those two specific areas. So that's a combination of the shift left component as well as the shift right component. In terms of what is DAST, so at its simplest level, DAST is a technology that allows you to crawl an application, it audits the application, and then it reports on the vulnerabilities that it finds. Now, what this implies on this specific slide is that all of this happens serially. Actually, and Bhavna will go into this in a bit more detail, the way the CA Veracode dynamic analysis product works is that it does this in parallel. So not only is it crawling the application in terms of what it's trying to find, what links it's seeing, how it's trying to detect vulnerabilities, how it's inserting and trying to determine vulnerabilities, but it's also auditing in the background. So it goes through its crawl phase, it goes through its audit phase, and then we're generating reports on the back of that to tell you exactly where in your application we're finding specific vulnerabilities and how we actually got there in terms of how we crawl through the application, how we inserted, and then how we determine what the vulnerability actually is. So in terms of what does dynamic analysis or what does DAST find and why is it important? And how is it different from, say, a static scan, for example? Whereas a static scan, you upload a binary, you then decompose that binary, and you run that in a static environment. Or something like a green light, which was referenced in one of the earlier slides, where you're actually just it's still in a static environment and you're determining the vulnerabilities for a specific file. The way dynamic works, or where dynamic or DAST works in general, is it's actually detecting things in runtime. So whether you're writing the tests to determine how your application is actually functioning or how a user will actually use your application, it's using that mechanism to determine what vulnerabilities exist and what security vulnerabilities we're actually finding. So the main difference between a static environment and a dynamic environment is that the dynamic environment or DAST environment is actually doing things in runtime as opposed to static, which is looking at a sort of a pre-boxed environment of a static application that you've uploaded. And the issues that you find are different. Static will find a set of vulnerabilities in the application. Dynamic may find additional vulnerabilities. So, and the reason that's important is that as part of your vulnerability or security posture, you should actually be running both static scans as well as dynamic scans to ensure that you meet your security policies and your security posture. In terms of where we actually did a survey fairly recently to ask our customer base or a broader section of the segment that we tend to address, which is the enterprise, where they use dynamic or where they use DAST in general, why they believe it's still important, and how often they're scanning. And what we found is that specific customers either scan on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis, but they will always scan, as part of their security policies and procedures, they're constantly scanning, both from a static perspective as well as from a dynamic perspective. And the reason they're doing this is because, as I stated earlier, it's around the fact that different applications find different vulnerabilities in your application. And just because you run a static scan or just because you run a dynamic scan doesn't necessarily mean you found all the vulnerabilities that exist in that application. So it's incumbent that as you go through your CI/CD cycle, you use the relevant tools to find all the vulnerabilities that exist in your application set. In the case of dynamic, it's both in the pre-production environment as well as in the post-production environment. And what I'd like to do now is hand over to Bhavna, and she will walk through exactly what the CA Veracode web application scanning or the dynamic analysis tool is.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vipin. So what you're seeing on your screen is the entire CA Veracode web application scanning portfolio. we have two parts to this portfolio. One is CA Veracode Discovery. Discovery helps you find, based on the IP ranges and some keywords and domains that you provide, in case you don't know all the applications that you have in your perimeter, we help you find. That is CA Veracode Discovery. CA Veracode Dynamic Analysis, which I'm going to spend most of my time talking about for the rest of the webinar, is the automated, DAST solution that we've built that has automation, ease of use, and coverage, which essentially helps applications that are in runtime to find vulnerabilities so that you can keep them safe and avoid the risk of a breach. So let's get into some of those details of what CA Veracode Dynamic Analysis does. And so we have three different areas that we have focused on. One is automation. Second is easy to onboard and scale. And third is, coverage and time to results. It's whether you are looking at it from an information security perspective and you are responsible for ensuring your entire perimeter and all the web applications are kept safe, or you are a security lead, actually security practitioner who's running the scans, it is really important for you that there is a solution, a DAST solution that works for your needs, and you actually can configure quickly and get in and scan your web applications and then get the results. Ultimately, it is really about getting the results so that you can keep your web applications safe. So the first aspect here is the automation. In order to automate and ensure that your configuration is done quickly so that you can scan your web application, there's a couple of different areas that are really important. The first one is, scheduling automation with recurring scanning. It's not enough that you scan once. It's not enough that you scan once a year. You have to scan on a recurring basis. The recurring basis could be once a week, once a month, once every 2 months, or a quarter. So so we provide that feature called recurring scanning. Another feature that we provide is the IT maintenance window, or the pause and resume. It's a very important feature because as you work with your IT teams, there are set windows when you can scan, and you may be asked to scan over the weekend, and times where your web application is not very busy. So that's when automation really comes into play. You may have hundreds of web applications that you do want to keep safe. So that's where the ease of onboarding your applications and the scale is very important, and we offer batch scanning and concurrent scanning to help you with that. When you think of getting the accurate results from your scanning, it is important to ensure that a broad coverage of applications is provided by your DAST solution. And when I say broad coverage, your website could be built using Angular frameworks. It's single page app driven. There's a big breadth of CWEs that have to be covered. And also, you only want to hear about vulnerabilities that are important, and that the ones that you need to fix that are high severity, very high, medium, etc. And you want the noise, which is you want a very, very low false positive rate, because you don't want to be encumbered by things that you don't have to take action on. So we do provide actionable results in dynamic analysis. So let me now show you a couple of proof points. I talked about automating your scans. So what I want to do now is to show a screen that talks about, how to set up your recurring scans. I talked about, I gave you an example of setting up a weekly scan or a monthly or a quarterly scan. On your screen, what you're seeing right now is a weekly recurring scan that has been set up once a week, and it runs on every Tuesday, and it runs for the rest of the year, so 52 weeks. And the scan is set for a duration of 24 hours. as you notice, a lot of this is, configurable. You can change the recurrence, you can change the duration. If you want your scan, depending on the size of the application, if you want it to run for a longer length of time, you can absolutely do that. Under recurring, you see pause and resume. This is an important feature because the department is going to tell you exactly when to scan. So you're going to be given like a maintenance window, and you have to abide by, not scanning during that maintenance window. So we provide you what is known as a do not scan during certain hours or do not scan during certain days. And you can set it up very easily in this UI, and you're off you go. So the next time you need to kick off a scan, let's say it is a week later or a month later, you do not have to come back to the UI and set all of this up. And that's the beauty of having recurring scanning and automated pause and resume, is that the system takes care of that for you. And what you see on your right-hand side is the schedule summary. If you click on the preview schedule, we'll tell you exactly when the scan is going to be run. We give you the duration. We tell you when the pause and resume setup is going to take place. And when you pause, we essentially save the state of the scan, and then when we resume, it resumes exactly where it stopped previously. Okay, so the next proof point that I would like to show you is the ease of onboarding your applications and the scale that we provide. You see a screen where it says URLs and application. I'm uploading a CSV file. We provide you the ability to upload a CSV file and provide you a CSV template, because that allows you to upload the URLs that you have in one go. So instead of scanning a single URL at a time, setting up the configuration and kicking off the scan, we now provide you the ability of scale. You can scale to hundreds of URLs if you like. That's in your perimeter, and you can also provide login credentials, either auto login or basic authentication if you wish. We also have the ability to do login, to upload a login script, but at the CSV level, you can just provide your username and your password if you wish. And then you upload the file, and all of your URLs that is present in the CSV file is now, part of the system, and it's been uploaded in one shot. So it's a pretty nifty way of going about, setting up your scans in a very short amount of time. The next one is the quality of results that we provide. We definitely provide a high quality of results when it comes to the coverage that we provide, and also, the time that it takes to provide you that result. We know your time is important and you need your results quickly. What I'm showing you on the screen is the viewer that we have that has a listing of CWEs that were found during the dynamic scan. And at the bottom, you see the listing with the ID and the name of the vulnerability that was found. And you can click on it and get the details of that vulnerability. We show you the request response or any other details that goes along with that particular CWE that was found. And once you have this information, then your developers can look at that CWE that was found, and then go ahead, go forward with fixing that issue. We also offer help when it comes to consultation help with ensuring that you get all the help that you need before you go ahead and fix that issue. On the right hand side, you also see the different login settings that we offer in our product. There are 3 login settings. One is the auto login, where you provide the username and the password. There's the forms-based, where you upload a login script. This is probably the most popular way to do it, but if you're in a hurry, you just can give the username and password. And also there is basic authentication. And that we offer in the product as well. Now, let me switch gears and talk a little bit about the services that we provide. The first one is the remediation consultation. What this is we have staff that will provide you guidance on understanding the results that came from the DAST scans. And they are just a phone call away, and we help you ensure that you get access to them so that they can explain what that CWE is and how to go about fixing it. The second one is security program management. The program management team is there to be your guide, if you will, and help you set up an AppSec program so that, scanning is not just a one-shot thing. You have to constantly, repeatedly scan so that your runtime applications are kept safe. And our security program managers are there to guide with setting up the AppSec program. Last but not least is the operational assistance that we provide. We provide two types of guidance. One is the login script assistance. We do recognize that occasionally you may need help with setting up your login script, and also if there is an issue in the login script, to very quickly help you fix them. Our product itself, we provide, guidance within the product to fix to tell you what the issue is and help you fix them, help you troubleshoot them. But we also have humans who can help you with this. And then they also help with false positive removal. Our product has less than 1% false positives in the results that we provide you. And while the product itself is automated and removes the FPs, we also have humans in the background who will remove any remaining false positives, so that the vulnerabilities that you receive are all actionable and something that you take action on and go ahead and fix to keep your applications safe. So, as we get to, closing thoughts here, DAST scanning, as Vipin was talking about, SAST and DAST and Greenlight, the different services that we offer, DAST scanning is an integral part of a well-rounded AppSec program. If you are doing static scanning today, you are scanning, parts of your application when it's in rest. When you do dynamic scanning, your application is running, it's in runtime, and the vulnerabilities that are found are, truly, they are actionable. Those are the ones that the hackers will take advantage of. So DAST scanning can be done both in pre-production and production environments. Also, scanning helps ensure, continuous security. It's not a one-shot deal. You do have to scan, repeatedly, a recurring manner over, so that that your application is kept safe. And last but not least, the DAST solution should provide you with automation, easy to scan, easy to onboard, scalability, so that all of your applications are tested quickly in an efficient manner, and then the results are provided in, with full coverage and also quickly, with speed. So now I want to point out that we also have the Veracode community, where we can continue the conversation. You can learn more. You can watch a demo of dynamic analysis, and you can learn more about the product. At this point, I think we could take some questions.
Great. All right. Yeah, we do have some questions in, so but there's plenty of time if anybody has any questions for Bipin or Bhavna. Please go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit it. First question, what are the main differences between what static finds and what dynamic testing finds?
Yeah, let's go ahead and answer that. So what static finds is, when you upload a file, what you find when you do a static scan by uploading a binary is flaws, which are potential issues that can happen, and we find the issues that's present in the code. What Dynamic finds is the application is in runtime. So the application is running, and we find exploitable vulnerabilities. These are vulnerabilities that are not potential ones, but those that can actually be exploited. So that's the difference. One, the application is at rest. The other, the application is in runtime, which is how after your application is deployed or it's in pre-production, and we find exploitable vulnerabilities.
All right, great. Next question. I need to perform an annual pen test for compliance. Can I replace that with DAST?
That's actually a very good question. No, well, you actually, as part of, and I think I said this right at the beginning of the presentation, there's different, as part of your AppSec strategy, you should actually have a number of different tools, and there's benefits to running a pen test or manual penetration testing on a sort of a yearly basis, effectively. Dynamic adds value, so both of those two tools actually add value. One from a specific vulnerabilities that you're manually trying to determine whether you actually have those vulnerabilities. Dynamic is a more of an automated tool. So it will try and you run that more often. It actually allows you to detect, as Bhavna said, runtime vulnerabilities. But it may, the idea is that as part of your total AppSec strategy, you should be looking at it from a perspective of one doesn't replace the other. It's more of a case of each one will find vulnerabilities in its own environment and where it's being placed in the CI/CD development cycle, and it's adding value. So whether it's static or green light or dynamic or even manual penetration testing, there is a requirement as part of your AppSec strategy to think about how you cover or you provide complete coverage across your application environment.
All right, great. Next question. For DAST scanning to be efficient, it often requires a script to allow the DAST to see all parts of the application. It is sometimes a challenge to find the required resources to create and maintain those scripts. So what solution do you have?
So, as Bhavna mentioned during the presentation, we have a team that actually looks at not only when we audit and when we publish our results, the team actually looks at what vulnerabilities they're finding, whether they're and what level of coverage we're getting inside the application itself. The specific question I think that is being asked is, we leverage third-party tools, or there are customers that actually leverage third-party tools to create a script, which is typically either a login script or a crawl script. And they use that as a mechanism to actually crawl through the application to a specific point and then run the scan in that environment. So we can leverage those tools as well. So the customer can create a script for us. We will then use our internal, we call them as DSCs, but they're actually a group of people that look at the particular crawl script and then work out whether that environment is going can be leveraged inside our application, make the right modifications, and then apply that to the dynamic scanner, so that the scanner will then work its way through that to that specific point in the application, and then run a crawl and audit, and then determine vulnerabilities from there.
Okay, great. If you have a question for Bipin or Bhavna, please go ahead and use your control panel. We still have plenty of time for questions. Our next question, let's see, how can I leverage APIs to kick off scans and get the results back in my Jira environment? And what other integrations are available?
So that's a great question. So we do have REST APIs that we've developed with dynamic analysis, that can be used to kick off scans and have an automated setup for kicking off scans and then getting the results that you can look at. I do want to point out that it's not necessary to use APIs to kick off the scan in order to have a Jira integration. We actually already integrate with Jira. We have a couple of different integrations. One is with Jira, the other is with Jenkins. And with Jira, it's it's very useful for development teams when the CWEs that we found actually make their way and flow into Jira, and they can start picking at the high severity vulnerabilities and start working on them. So the integration is available whether you're using API to kick off the scan or not, or whether you're using the UI. But to answer the API question, we also have REST APIs that can be used to kick off the scan.
All right, excellent. Next question. I hear that DAST scanning can be really slow and break my process. What have you done with dynamic analysis to improve this?
So the way we approach this is a number of mechanisms. So we've actually built the dynamic platform from the ground up. It's been re-architected at all levels of the application itself. So it's now highly scalable, as well as in terms of scan speed. Traditional dynamics or DAST scanners have taken a long time to run through an application. If you think about what DAST scanning is, it's actually a black box scan. So it doesn't know the start and the finish of an application. It's just going into the application, crawling it, auditing, and determining the vulnerabilities. But what we're actually doing is we have a number of internal technologies we've now applied, and we're continuing to extend those to not only get 100% coverage effectively inside an application if that's possible, but also to try and reduce the scan times as well, from say 3 days to maybe 24 hours and that type. So we start to incorporate that as part of our shift left strategy, or as part of our customer shift left strategy. So there are specific technologies that we've applied. I won't go into them in a bit more detail because some of them are very tied to a Veracode IP. But what it's doing is it's determining what capabilities or what plugins effective to load up, work out what the application or how the application is constructed, and then using that as a mechanism to determine how far into the application it can scan, what vulnerabilities it's likely to find, and then use that as a recursive mechanism throughout the scan itself.
All right, great. Last call for questions. If you have something for either of our panelists, either Vipin or Bhavna, please go ahead and get it in. The next question that we have is, I'm debating between DAST and WAF. Why should I go with DAST? So
let me sort of explain the main differences between what a dynamic environment is doing, what a WAF does. A WAF is basically, as the acronym suggests, is an application. It's a web application firewall. So it's an appliance that's effectively in the same way that you would create a firewall ring around your data center. What a WAF does is the second line of protection, and it creates a ring in front of your web services or your web front end. What it's doing is it's looking at traffic coming in inline typically, or sometimes of a proxy, and determining whether the request response sequences going in are valid and whether they should be blocked or not. Now, the issue with a WAF is that what it's going to do is it will block everything depending on how you've set up the policy. So it may be a legitimate request going in, and if the policy isn't set up correctly, it will actually block that request and block access to the website. What Dynamic is doing is it's running in runtime and determining what vulnerabilities still exist within your application, and then how to remediate those vulnerabilities. So not only are we providing runtime determination of what actually exists in your application, not only what framework but what vulnerabilities are actually there, but then we're also providing remediation guidance in terms of, as part of this application in this structure, this is what we're seeing, whether it's a cross-scripting attack or whether it's a SQL injection or whatever it happens to be. That's typically the main difference. One is actually determining vulnerabilities. The other one is just set up to block specific things, and which you have to be aware of in the first instance.
Okay, great. Just got another question, and I know DAST is designed for web application. Can I use Veracode DAST to scan a web service application?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Today, dynamic analysis can be used for web applications only. However, we are actually working on incorporating scanning web services, such as, REST APIs, whether it's, internal or external APIs that are available that need to be scanned as well. So we are very much aware of this request and this need from our customers, and we are actively working on providing this capability. What's interesting about APIs is, we built our product completely on microservices and APIs, and we know that our customers, all of you out there, are also, doing the same. You're using the latest and greatest technologies and building APIs. So as we move forward with dynamic scanning, it's important that not only are we scanning web applications, but we are also scanning APIs. So stay tuned on this, and we are working on it.
All right. Excellent. All right, guys. Well, that is all the questions that we have. So I do want to thank everybody who did submit questions. There were some really good ones there, so thank you. And also want to remind the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, you will be able to listen to it, or even if you just want to listen to it again, it will be available on demand. The webinar, in addition to being able to access it on demand via a link, it will be on the Security Boulevard website. So you can always go to the website there, just click on the webinars tab, and it will be there in the on-demand section. We've got lots of other webinars there also, so take a look around. Hopefully there'll be one or two that pique your interest, both upcoming and on demand. Bipin Mistry and Bhavna Sarathi, thank you both very much for your time today and for such a great presentation. I know I got a lot out of it, and judging from the audience questions, so did they. So thanks so much. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.